Welcome to Well Told Tales, the Pulp Fiction podcast. Twice a month, we bring you a pulpy tale in the horror, sci-fi, or hard-boiled genres. Today we've got a story from Kevin Anderson, who wrote The Lure of Heaven, which we featured recently. Kevin's also got stories on podcasts like Pseudopod and the Drabblecast. If you go to welltoldtales.com and click on Kevin's page, we've got links to those stories as well. The story is read by Brandon Carpenter, the producer and host of the Outlaw Punk Cowboy Show, a music podcast that I've been getting into lately. Stick around at the end of the story and you can hear a promo for that show. And if you come to our site, welltoldtales.com, go to Brandon's page and you'll find a link to the show. Hope you enjoy the story. Thanks for listening.
Piercing the Dead by Kevin Anderson, read by Brandon Carpenter. I'm a lot of things. Adulterer, barroom brawler, and if you count the war, killer. But I'm no liar, and it rubbed me wrong to have to fib to my granddaughter when she asked me who was the strangest person to come into my shop. Telling her the truth would have been kindred to a sin. No 12-year-old needs to know that the things going bump in the night aren't always products of a youngster's imagination. My granddaughter doesn't need to know that monsters are real. Hell, I'm in my 50s, and I wish I didn't know. But there is no going back, not after that night. It started out like any other. The sun fell out of the sky fast, plunging the 6th Street Club District in Austin, Texas into darkness, the kind that seemed to be an open invitation for the city's night things. Neo-punkers and club hoppers spilled out thick onto the street that Friday night. All believed the night was theirs. All believed they could live forever. I own the ink spot tattoo and piercing parlor on the south end of 6th Street. There is a head shop on my left and a New Age bookstore to the right, where all the young Wiccan gals seem to gather. I see them as they walk by my window, their long hair resting on flowing cloaks. Makes me wish I were 20 again. On this particular August evening, I had just walked into the shop after my semi-nightly viewing of the Mexican free-tailed bats leaving the Congress Avenue Bridge. I had seen it 1,000 times, but it never ceased to fill me with wonder, watching that black cloud of just over 1 million bats leaving all at once in search of food. "How are the bats?" my assistant Chloe said. "Hungry," that was my standard reply. She checked out early that night, leaving me alone to pierce and tattoo the dozen or so college kids that would eventually stagger in. By a little past 11, there were 3 girls in the waiting room and 1 in my chair. I was doing a quick touch-up on a heart-shaped rose that had faded from too much exposure to spring break, when out of the corner of my eye I saw a very tall black woman speaking with the girls in the waiting room. Didn't notice her come in, but the hum of my needle draws most of my focus. When I had a second look up, she was handing out money. Each girl quickly snatched an unknown amount of cash from the stranger and promptly left my establishment. Then the woman had the gall to turn my open sign to close. By this point, my blood pressure was about ready to do a Mount St. Helens. She quickly walked to the back of the store as if what she had done was the most natural thing in the world. Without addressing me, she looked down at the girl in my chair. "Sweetie, how about you come back some other evening and it'll be on me?" The girl in the chair looked at the $200 bills the tall woman was holding out for her, then back at me. With a sigh, I held up my hands in surrender, and the girl jumped out of my chair. In the span of a moment, my establishment had been cleared out, and I was alone with this tall, gaunt, blank woman. Her hair was cut so tight around her scalp, I swear it was painted on. She wore a black leather miniskirt, patent black boots, a tight-fitting blouse with a macabre array of zippers. A long scarf completely concealed her slender neck. She looked Caribbean or Creole, probably from New Orleans or thereabouts. Still, pretty pissed, I gazed into her brown eyes. "You just sent about $1,000 worth of business out the door, honey." It was closer to 300 or 400, but my anger tends to exaggerate a bit. "Can you give me one good reason why I don't bounce your butt out of here?" She reached into her coffin-shaped purse and pulled out $2,000 bills. I had never seen a $1,000 bill, let alone two. I tried to get my bug eyes under control as she said, "I need a piercing done. I heard you were good." In the greedy glare of all those zeros, my anger evaporated. "So you need a piercing, do you?" I said as I grabbed the bills, tucking them into my shirt pocket. "Yes. First things first, though. The security cameras. They feed into a VCR?" She pointed to the 3 cameras mounted around the shop. "Yeah. Won't be much help to the cops catching the guy who blows my brains out if they weren't." I pointed to the VCR strapped under my work table. She stepped forward, bent over, and popped the tape out. "If you don't mind." Fact was, I did mind, but there was $2,000 in my pocket that screamed to me, "No, you don't, dummy." "What kind of piercing do you have in mind?" I said. "Not me," she grinned, showing teeth. "Him." She gestured to the front of my shop. My first thought, upon laying eyes on the figure in my waiting room, was, okay, there's a dead man in my shop. But when it started walking toward me, I revised my first impression. Now I had a walking dead man in my shop. As the man approached, it became painfully clear that he was deathly ill. His complexion was bloodless, and sweat dripped from his features. It was a hot August night, but not that hot, not by a long ways. When he was a few feet away, his body went into some kind of convulsion, flailing against the wall. His face was that of a corpse. I could see dark veins just under translucent skin, as if the blood inside of them had stopped flowing a while ago. I wanted to say, "This boy needs a mortician, not a piercing," but it settled for, "I think he needs a doctor." "They can't help him," she said. "Now, let's get this done." I looked into the man's eyes. They were hauntingly gray and old, very old. I realized at that point that I wanted Creole Lady and Zombie Man out of my shop as fast as I could get them gone. "All right, I have a selection of stainless steel posts, studs, and hoops over here. What did—" "No, I have one," she cut me off. From inside her purse, she pulled out a small leather box. Embroidered on the top was an ankh, big and ancient-looking. It wasn't an uncommon symbol, especially after that movie with David Bowie that I never got around to seeing. It's supposed to be Egyptian or some such thing, means everlasting life. She pulled the lid back, revealing a thick chrome metallic-looking post of a very thick gauge. "That's big for a new piercing," I said. "It doesn't matter, just do it." Creole Lady helped Zombie Man into my chair. I put on some rubber gloves and retrieved the thing from her creepy little box. I need to sterilize it. "No need, it's taken care of." She snapped the box closed as the dead man in my chair started to convulse again. Besides, there isn't time. He writhed in the seat, leaned forward with his head between his knees until the spasms stopped. Then he sat back up. His eyes seemed to fixate on my throat. His mouth dropped open and released a soft sigh. I swear he was watching the blood flow in my neck. With my attention captivated by Zombie Man, I failed to notice from where Creole Lady had pulled out a set of handcuffs. By the time I noticed what the gal was doing, she had just finished cuffing her friend's hands to the chair. The clinking sound of the cuffs closing reminded me how much I wanted them out of my shop. "Hey, now," I raised my hands. "I don't know what you two are into, but I don't do anything weird. Look, maybe we should do this some other time. Your friend here seems real sick and, to be honest, a little creepy, so if my mom has told me once, she told me 1,000 times, if it don't feel right, it ain't right." The small .22 caliber pistol Creole Lady was now pointing at my nose seemed to echo Mama's sentiment. Damn, I really should have listened to her more. "No more screwing around. Get it done now," the Creole Lady said. It wasn't the first time a gun had been thrust in my face, but it was the first time I didn't ever for a minute question the gun owner's willingness to use it. All right, where does it go? I tried to sound cool, not sure if I was successful. Left eyebrow will do, she said, pointing with the gun. I leaned forward to mark the spot with a pen when he suddenly lurched outward with his mouth and snapped at my throat like a rabid dog. Jesus, I can't do anything with him bouncing around like that. Creole lady seemed to have a moment of indecision, but just a moment. In an obviously practiced move, she took up a position behind the chair, swiftly wrapped her free arm around Zombie Man's neck. Her other hand kept the gun waving in my face. Let's get on with it, she said through clenched teeth. I tossed the pen to the ground and took up my piercing blade. I pinched the skin above the man's eyebrow and heard a soft fracturing sound like bones snapping. I thought perhaps I had broken something on the frail man, but when I looked down, I saw that I couldn't have been more wrong. The noise was coming from his open mouth, and I watched in horror as his canine teeth grew a full inch. What the hell is he? I said, recoiling. Pump, you got less than a minute to get this done, or we're both real dead. Her eyes met mine, and I could see that I wasn't the only one about to piss their pants. When I heard the bone-splintering sounds again, I tried not to look, but couldn't help myself. His mouth was open wider than was possible, and the rest of his jagged ivory was growing. His teeth looked like inmates during a prison break, scattering in all directions, escaping the confines in the once human mouth. Do it! Creole lady screamed. I reached up for his eyebrow again, and my fingers slipped off. I thought it was the man's sweat that was making him slippery, but as I took a harder look, my jaw dropped open with a gasp. There was hair growing out of his forehead, thin at first, but in seconds it merged with his hairline and became as thick as anyone's scalp. Then the real noise started. Bone-cracking sounds came from his whole body as he started to reconstruct from the inside out. His mouth started to push forward, becoming a snout, barely able to restrain its teeth. The skin covering his convulsing fingers splintered and cracked as claws forced their way out of the tips, like newborn reptiles bursting through eggshells. Do it, she screamed. I can't even see his eyebrow anymore. Lord have mercy. Diving in, I made a hole somewhere about the eyebrow, or where the eyebrow used to be. As fast as I could, I shoved the unsterilized post in the hole as a set of teeth snapped at my arm. I heard the sound of breaking metal as the cuffs broke, and I saw a clawed hand flailing wildly. I fell out of my chair, hoping to stay out of the monster's grasp. Creole lady dropped the gun and used her other arm to try to restrain the thrashing, hair-covered hand. She grasped at it in the air, catching it by the fingers just as the claws and hair started to retract. After several more violent moments, and God help me, howling, their fingers intertwined, and she pulled his hand back down to the armrest on the chair. The beast's face began to fade away, and in its place was one that started to look human. I got a few seconds glance at what a Neanderthal might have looked like as the inhuman snout and teeth retracted, leaving large, hairy cheekbones and brow framing the man's face. In a moment more, even those disappeared, sinking back into the normal folds of a human expression. I pulled my butt off the ground as Creole lady uncuffed her companion's other hand. He stretched like someone waking from a long nap, looking much better than he did when he came in. He looked alive. Was I a bother? He said to Creole lady. No, sweetie. She kissed his forehead. We were running a bit late, that's all. Won't happen again. Promise. He spun in the chair and looked at himself in the mirror. Very nice, he said, touching the new pierced eyebrow. Creole lady must have read the confusion on my face. He doesn't have it under control yet. The silver helps. She smiled and turned to her companion. Let's go. You're on stage in an hour. She dropped a couple of tickets in the chair and said, Come out to the show, Pops. I recognized the club from color of the tickets. A god-awful speed metal hole in the wall down the street. No thanks, I'm a Crosby, Stills, and Nash man. Suit yourself. I watched the two exit my shop, arm in arm. Creole lady stopped at the entrance and changed my clothes sign back to open. Then as quickly as they had come, they were gone. I stared at the reflection of the full moon in the glass of my front window, just listening to my heart pound. After my blood pump started its normal rhythm, or as close as it would ever get to normal again, I looked down at the tickets. They read, "One night only at the Boneyard, the musical stylings of the Lon Chaney Juniors." Yes, sir, I tell you what, this is one tale I won't be telling my grandbabies.
And that's our tale for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please tell your friends about us. Or if you really like us, consider making a small cash donation via the PayPal button at the bottom of our website, welltoldtales.com. Your donations help us to pay our authors. As always, we distribute these files on a Creative Commons license, specifically the Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 2.5 license. So you can share the files with your friends, you can burn a CD for mom, just don't change the program and don't try to make a profit from it. We'll have another story for you in a couple weeks. Take care.
www.outlawpunk.com has got your alternative sizzle. Join the Outlaw Bubba at the frontier of the redneck resurgence. Cowpunk, punkatry, twangcore, hip-hop, redneck metal, and gorilla grass. You'll get Wild West glamour stomping down your urban hillbilly. Burn up some digital petrol and head to www.outlawpunk.com for your hoedown experience of y'alternative.